My philosophy is don't compete, create.
There you go.
When you're competing, you end up frustrated because, like you said, you're going head to head with these guys. Like, I'm not going to try to do what you're doing. I'm going to figure out, is there something you're missing, and evaluate it. And we did that. I'm competing in a big space
For
like
sure.
that too, but I wasn't trying to be Andy Frisella. I'm trying to be First Form.
No.
I looked at First Form like, man, I would love to be that.
Yeah,
but let me see.
I'd love to do 450 million sales.
Man, of course. But let me see where there's a void somewhere in there, and we found it in the delivery system. But it's still, I'm still going ahead against 800-pound gorillas, but we have a little void that we found, and it's working for us. But when I'm out here trying to be Andy Frisella or Dan Fleischman or Eric Spofford, I'm just going to end up frustrated. So for me, the best advice I ever got was don't compete. Go out there and create.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Money Mondays. I am co-hosted here with the real Tarzan. Today's episode is going to be very good. This is a dear friend of mine I've known for many, many, many years. I've watched him build his businesses. I've watched him exit companies, invest in companies, help other entrepreneurs build themselves up, do coaching programs, speak on stages, and everything in between. Please welcome Mr. John Malott.
Hey,
happening?
I'm excited. It's good to be here.
This
man.
one's
in
so
the
easy.
RV.
This one's gonna be so easy. It's gonna
This will
all right.
be fun.
So the way we work is we talk about 3 core topics: how to make money,
Yep.
how to invest money, and how to give someone away to charity. But first, John Malott, give us the 2-minute bio so we can get straight to the money.
Okay. Look, I don't have all the things society says you're supposed to have to be successful. No college degree, no high school diploma. First felony arrest, I was 15. 18 months juvenile detention facility when I got out. I tried to start a business, but I didn't get the memo. Don't get high on your own supply.
Yeah.
Had a heart attack at 17 years old from using my product. Was locked up again for a little while because of some circumstances around that. I finally get clean, and things were starting to roll in the right direction. But in drug rehabilitation, I met a guy by the name of Dave. Dave was a former outlaw motorcycle gang member. Dave was the one who said, real business is your way out, the way out of the neighborhood, the whole bit. Dave was the first guy who held the mirror up and said, you're here because of you. Take responsibility. Anyways, from there, things were kind of rolling, and my last felony arrest, I was 24 years old. Now, as an adult, sitting on the bullpen floor in the Milwaukee County Jail is where I made the decision. I'm finally going to listen to Dave, and I'm going to start to pursue. And because nobody would hire me because of my background, entrepreneur. It was either bum or entrepreneur.
Right.
And so that's where it began. And then network marketing was really the only place that I didn't even know what network marketing was. But I went to a meeting and they said, "Hey, you should join us." And I'm like, "You really want me?" And anyway, so that was the beginning. And for 7 years, I struggled to make anything happen. It took me 7 years to finally crack $100,000 in a year. And then from there, things, really happened. My first year as a full-time entrepreneur, I made $4,000. So you could,
Wow.
I was great. Everyone was laughing, man. I was still rolling in my Pontiac 2000, 2-tone, 1-tone rust, 1-tone dirt. It was just,
like that.
Yeah, it was just.
That was good.
Yeah, it was rough, man. But yeah, that's the story. If you see the tears, welling up in my eyes every time I think about it, yeah. But,
What was the turning point? When it was like, we're going to go from $100,000 a year after year 7 to like, oh, wow, we're starting to make some real money.
Well, I could tell you for sure. It was. I had a few defining moments, but the big one was Lauren, my daughter. When she was born, I now had like this
Responsibility.
Yeah, I had a responsibility. I had a big ass reason why. Like, I got to get her out of this neighborhood. She cannot grow up in the same neighborhood. So that drove me, man. That kept me up at night, got me up early in the morning, and then it was just consistent. Because I was never consistent before. There was a big roller coaster ride. When I got consistent, I got some discipline in my life. Things changed pretty dramatically, pretty quickly. I went from like 116,000 to 220,000 to the next year was $1 million a year. Then it went to $2 million a year. I mean, it was. I had to get her out. There was no way I could have a daughter growing up in that same neighborhood.
What do you think the difference is from someone in network marketing that makes $200 or $300 a month versus $200,000 or $300,000 a month? What is the difference?
Taking it seriously. The challenge in network marketing is like, if you go all in, you might have invested $1,000. I mean, my wife has clothes in her closet that cost $1,000 that she never wore. I had bad dates cost me $1,000 with no possibility of return. Like, people don't take it seriously. So it drives me nuts when people, there's a misconception and a bad, this bad juju around it, and it's only because they say, well, people fail. Well, people fail in everything.
Everything.
If you don't do the work, you're gonna fail, man.
Yeah.
And if you invested, like a lot of these companies, you can get in for $49. You know, how serious are you gonna take it? But for me, it was like do or die because no one was gonna hire me, and I didn't have another alternative. So it was like, I'm gonna make this work one way or the other.
So if someone's thinking about getting into network marketing, how do they decide what brand, product, or service that they should be a part of?
This is another big, you know, I just wrote the book MLM's Dirty Little Secrets, and I talk about this a lot. You know, just because your friend says, hey, you should join me in business, doesn't necessarily mean you should join him in business.
Sure.
So it's the same way you'd evaluate, the way you would evaluate, and I've heard you on stage many times, and we've talked about this, how you would evaluate any, like if you're going to put money, investment, you're going to invest here, it's sweat equity more than financial. So, I mean, you're going to put your time into this. Who are you with? What's the track record? Look, if the owners have had like several indictments, that's usually red flags. Yeah. And there's a lot of that out there. So there is some justifiable bad publicity around the industry because, you know, wherever there's a lot of money to be made, there's going to be bad characters.
Actors, for sure.
So you gotta do your homework, man. Due diligence.
Tarzan, when did you decide it's going to go from your passion as a 4-year-old, 9-year-old, 13-year-old, 17-year-old, just loving animals to I'm going to go work with ZWF, or I'm going to go work with the zoo, or I'm going to go work at the pet store? Like, when do you decide you're going to take your passion into a career?
I knew from day one, you know, when I was a kid, and I was like, I want to be in the animal space. I want to be a zoologist. And I learned what a herpetologist was, which is a study of reptiles and amphibians. And I mean, when I had to be less than 10. I was like, bro, I'm not doing anything else. I was so sought on animals. That was it. And even throughout high school and like college, I just think about animals. When I got able to work, I'm like, I don't want to be a waiter. I don't want to be a bus boy. I'll go shovel dog crap at the ASPCA for free. You know, like I just wanted to be all in on animals, and all of my business ideas are just surrounded by animals. You know, how I make, you know, I want to make pet food. I want to make better cat food. You know, and at the time I never had a cat. You know, so it's like just constant flow of just turning my brain on what can I do for the betterment of animals. How can I learn this? How can I learn that? And it's just like an obsession, man.
I love it.
You know?
Let me tell you something. My daughter, Cody, is going to freak out because she loves Tarzan. So,
thank you, man.
And you did a shout out for her one time, and she's going to just love this. So.
What's up, baby?
You gotta bring her to the wild jungle.
Yeah, we're coming. We're definitely coming out. That's super dope.
When you start to hit a pinnacle of a career, whether that's you're doing sports cards, you're doing restaurants, you're doing real estate, when you start to hit a pinnacle of a career, now you have options.
Yeah.
So people that are listening, you start to make 6 figures a year, or God willing, you make 7 figures a year.
Yeah.
You start to get options.
Yeah.
People try to poach you to come work for their companies. Brands try to poach you to come work with them. You have options. How do you decide at that point when you start to hit that 6-figure, 7-figure mark if you want to make a change to a different brand, product, or service?
Man, that's the $1 million question. See, because I've made so many mistakes. You know, like people, especially friends, man, they'll approach you with the next greatest thing, and there goes another 100,000. Right. There goes another 200,000. You know, I've lost more than I've made trying to switch, trying to like go do a different thing. I figured out that me staying in my lane works best, and the investment in myself and doubling down on what I do really, really well, which is build an organization around culture and community, that works. So for me, every time I step out, I mean, of course I have investments, you know, like, you know, I own Apple and the products that I use, I own, you know, I own those products and those tend to work out. But yeah, me jumping in with one of my buddies in their latest deal, just
no bueno.
And I love all you guys. I love all my friends. I'm not investing with you anytime soon.
So when people start to get approached about investing, they start to make 6 figures or 7 figures, and their friend does hit them up, 25 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand, 200, whatever that number is. How do they say no?
See that I couldn't say no. Now I'm catching on to say no. You know,
I say no a lot.
Yeah,
like a lot, because I get pitched hundreds of times a month.
And that's what happens. Well, anytime you get, that's what happens. As soon as you get money, like I'm getting pitched in the DMs on Instagram. People hit me up. Either they're asking for money.
They send me carrier pigeons
for everything. It's like
any way they can get hold of me.
No one gave me the time of day before. As soon as I got money, it's like everybody. You know, so it really is though, vetting people the same way. You know, you said it from stage yesterday. it comes back to track record too. If somebody's, clever investor, Cody Spur was my business partner in our company.
He's gonna make it work.
Yeah, he's got a track record of making
Right.
it work. You know what I
Right.
mean? So you find someone that does it and has done it well and
Right.
keeps doing
I'll
it.
bet on him. Yeah.
Yeah. You bet on the jockey,
He can
not
sell
the
microphones,
horse.
and I would invest with him. 'Cause,
Exactly.
like he's gonna make it work.
Yeah. See, I didn't get that. When I didn't have a business background, I didn't have mentors really. I had a guy named Jim Rohn early on who earned money if I sold something in network marketing, which, turns out, he's Tony Robbins' mentor.
Right.
I didn't know I was at the feet of greatness when I was at the feet of greatness. But I learned a lot from him, more about building that type of business. But I also learned about character. One of his biggest things was having unshakable character. So now I look for the character in people. People that scam people once tend to scam people twice. So I watch, stay away from people that have bad track records.
A lot of times I say no by saying yes, and here's an interesting way. The way I do it is I say, yes, I'll look at it. Send me your business plan. Send me your financials. Send me the overview about the company.
Do they do it?
Nobody does it.
I was going to say,
That's why I
you
say
told
yes.
me this one time.
I say yes hundreds of times by saying, yes, I'll look at your business plan. Send over, here's my email address. Send it along with your financials and your overview.
So they don't even have a plan
Crickets.
most of the time. They just want the money.
You know how funny it is?
Oh, that's
is then
interesting.
they feel awkward ever messaging me again. Because the last message says, yes, send me your deck, and they never do.
And they never do it.
Then they show up at an entrepreneur event, and I see them, and they're like, oh, I'm really excited. I'm going to send it to you next week. It's been 2 years. I'll bet you $100,000 you don't send it to me next week. Because they're not.
That's interesting.
The only time I ever get sent business plans is if they send it in advance. Someone starts off with a business plan, then I have it. I've never said, hey, Tarzan, go send me a business plan.
Yeah.
He's never going to do it. If he starts off sending me a business plan, then I'm going to see it. That's
then you
it.
can look at it.
And then people are listening are like, yeah, right, I'm going to send you a business plan. Okay. Here's my email address. Come on, DM me. I would love for you to send it to me because I am an active investor in 43 companies.
Yeah.
I did 11 investments through Elevator Syndicate. I did 9 investments through Elevator Rolling Fund just last year. I want to invest with people, and I don't have enough opportunities, even though I get 300 to 400 pitches a month.
Man.
When you really think about the math of that, that means 4,000 or 5,000 times a year, someone sends me a business plan, or someone says they're going to send me a business plan.
Yeah.
And I'm still only able to invest in around 1 or 2 deals a month
But
out of all that noise.
Isn't that like
Wow.
everything though? It's such a small percentage of people that actually do it. Like I don't care what industry. If we're talking about real estate, network marketing. I don't care what it is. It's a tiny percentage that will actually do the deal. You've heard the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. I think it's more like 90-10. So I guess it makes sense. A lot of people have ideas, but they don't execute on those ideas or follow through on them.
Yeah, 90% of people do not send it to me. I'll take the
That's
over.
interesting.
99% don't send it to me.
Well, that's my new thing from here on out.
Say yes, send me
Yes.
the business plan. But say yes, I'll look at it. Send me
Look
the
at
business
it.
plan.
Yeah, don't say yes, all
Yeah,
the best.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, because here's the next part. When they actually send it, which is very rare, then you ask for the real part. Do you have an investment document? You know how few people have an investment document? And I tell them, like, what if I like it? A few of them actually have a bank account or their corporation or LLC set up. A tiny percentage.
Yeah.
So when I do get business plans and I actually like it, I say, wow, great. Send me your financials. Send me the investment documents. And then those people fade
Yeah.
away.
So
That's
it's
why
just
I-
a sorting. The whole thing is a sorting. It's like putting them in the funnel.
That's how I'm only getting to do 1 or 2 deals in a month because nobody just does the basics. You know how much it costs to set up shop? Not much.
Yeah.
Business plan is free. Your LLC is going to be $300 to $1,200 depending on your state. Your trademark, you don't even need it, but it's going to be $0 to $800. I wrote a book called How to Set Up Your Business for under $1,000.
I read it, by the way.
And in there,
Yeah.
I show you how to set up a business for under $1,000.
Yeah.
Most people that pitch me there are saying, I'm going to raise $1 million at a $10 million valuation, don't have an LLC.
They didn't read your book.
They don't have a C Corp. They don't have a bank account.
That's
I literally, let's say they pitched us, and I'm like, oh yeah, me, Tarzan, John Malott, we're all in for $100K each. We literally couldn't wire the money because they don't have a
'Cause they don't
freaking bank
place it.
account.
that's fascinating.
You know why I say it with so much passion? Because I want to wire them $100K.
Yeah.
I want to be in the deal, and I
but
can't.
you can't.
So that's why, for the most part, I only invest
wild.
in companies doing $2 million to $20 million in sales, because if they're at the $2 million sales mark, they've gone through the process. People have already spent money with them. They're not just an idea. So for the most part, like last year, we did $44 million investments through Elevator Syndicate, $3 to $6 million at a time into companies doing 2 to 20 million sales. I barely ever get to invest in pure startups, which I would never do through my syndicate or my fund. I would only do me personally.
Personal.
Because I don't want to risk other people's capital on a pure startup idea.
Yeah.
However, it's so rare because people just don't follow through with the basics. And I know you're listening to us right now and you're saying I'm different. Please be different.
Be different.
Like this should bother you that you don't do it.
Yeah.
Because there are people like me, Tarzan, John Malott, Andy Frisella, Ed Milet. There's so many, Eric Spofford, all these, there's amazing entrepreneurs out there ready to wire.
That would.
If someone just showed them business plan, overview, financials, and a real product or service, not just another Me Too company, another wannabe company, another knockoff company. We don't need that. We don't need another 1100th energy drink. We don't. There's no void in the energy drink space.
Yeah.
We don't need a 700th tequila. There's no void in the tequila. If you're a celebrity listening, we do not need another celebrity tequila brand. We don't. We don't. It's just mathematically, we don't.
Yeah.
The bars, restaurants don't have room anymore for these products and brands.
So true.
And the big ones will pay to remove you. I'll give you guys a quick story. I had my energy drink back in the days. I was in 55,000 retail stores, and I was in a lot of nightclubs and restaurants and bars. And every month I got to hear from restaurants, bars, and nightclubs that told me, hey, Red Bull just paid to remove you. Hey, Rockstar just paid $10,000 to remove you. Hey, Red Bull just gave us 20 grand to be the exclusive. Hey, if you guys want, you could pay us 35,000, but if not, Monster Energy gave us 30,000. So if you ever get big in a category, you're going to be up against 800-pound gorillas in every space. There's no new space, by the way. There's 8 billion humans. There's nothing new. You don't have a new idea.
Yeah.
When you think about 8 billion humans that have dozens of ideas a month or a week, times that by 8 billion, you don't have a new idea. Yeah. And so because of that, I'm just having a really reality check with everyone right now. Like, if you are going to start a product, there has to be an actual void in the space.
Yeah.
There is no void when it comes to energy drinks, tequila, and a lot of other categories that like that. Not to say that you shouldn't have visions and ideas and aspirations, but if you're going to do it, make it stand out. I waited 4 years for us to do this podcast. You know why? There was 2 million podcasts.
2 million.
And there were, I don't even know how many hundreds of thousands of business podcasts. Why did we do it? Okay, we're going to make it stand out. We're going to do an RV motorhome.
I love it.
Ding, there's one thing. Next, we're going to put 2 guests per episode that are going to be different types of entrepreneurs, celebrities, athletes, etc. Ding. Sometimes we're going to bring in snakes and pythons and goats in a freaking RV.
That's definitely different.
Ding. We're going to make it only 40 minutes so that people that are listening can do their average workout of 45 minutes or average commute to work for 45 minutes.
I like
Ding.
that.
None of it's rocket science. It's just making things that stand out. Otherwise, I would have been a hypocrite.
Yeah.
If I just made business podcast number 242,000 like everybody else's podcast, we wouldn't be top 10 in the world. We've been top 10 for all 6 weeks in a row.
That's super dope.
Because we did things to stand out. So if you guys are listening, before you launch that business, find out what will stand out. Look at the market.
My philosophy is don't compete, create.
There you go.
When you're competing, you end up frustrated because, like you said, you're going head to head with these guys. Like, I'm not going to try to do what you're doing. I'm going to figure out, is there something you're missing, and evaluate it. And we did that. I'm competing in a big space
for
like
sure.
that too, but I wasn't trying to be Andy Frisella. I'm trying to be First Form. No. I looked at First Form like, man, I would love to be that.
Yeah,
but let me see.
I'd love to do 450 million sales.
Man, of course. But let me see where there's a void somewhere in there, and we found it in the delivery system. But it's still, I'm still going ahead against 800-pound gorillas, but we have a little void that we found, and it's working for us. But when I'm out here trying to be Andy Frisella or Dan Fleischman or Eric Spofford, I'm just going to end up frustrated. So for me, the best advice I ever got was don't compete. Go out there and create. And
so it's interesting, if you ever create a product that actually starts to build some buzz, if the competitors don't shut you down, they're going to acquire you.
Yeah.
For example, right now, I think that Gatorade is silly to not buy Prime from Logan Paul.
Yeah.
He is causing so much noise and so much disruption, but more importantly, he's getting shelf space. Really, really valuable shelf space that Gatorade has had for half a century.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
30, 40, 50 years, whatever it's been. Gatorade, if you're listening, you should be offering this kid $1 or $2 billion to take it off the market now.
Yep.
Before he goes from 250 million sales to 700 million sales. It's be too expensive.
Man.
Because No matter how good of a product Gatorade is, Gatorade to me is my favorite drink. I like the yellow Gatorade. To me, like give
That's
me
the
that
one.
any day of the week. That's what I want.
That's
right?
the OG.
I like cranberry juice and I like yellow Gatorades. If you guys ever see me, Prime, doesn't matter what you think comparable product or not, is taking end cap displays. You know what an end cap is? When you go to a grocery store and there's a walkway, the end cap is the first thing that customer sees. An end cap is the most priceless, most valuable real estate in a grocery store or a convenience store or a gas station.
Yeah.
Prime has end caps in freaking Walmart, the holy mecca. Prime has in Kroger. Do you understand what it takes to take that away from Coca-Cola and Gatorade and vitamin water? And I mean, like, this is mind-boggling. This kid is 27, 26, 28 years old. Logan, like, I love him.
Yeah.
But Gatorade, if you're listening, buy his company fast before you can't afford it.
Hey, if you're listening, come by my company too while you're at it.
And I say it because what John just said was he's up against 800-pound gorillas.
Yeah.
And if he can stand out and he can poke the bear, and instead of trying to crush him, they just acquire him. And so if he goes out there and does 4 million and then 12 million and then 36 million, at some point they want to buy him before he gets too big. You see that happen in the food and beverage space a lot. And I'm expecting it to happen to Prime really soon. Because when someone starts to get market share, like remember vitamin water?
Yeah. Yep.
Coca-Cola bought vitamin water for $4 billion and then shelved it. When's the last time you saw vitamin water in a grocery store?
That's true. Is that 50 Cent company? Yeah.
Think about that.
I haven't seen it.
They wanted the shelf space. It's a good product, a great brand.
Yeah.
It's a great name, vitamin water, even though it's full of sugar. Like,
Yeah.
it's a good brand of business, and they shelved most of it.
I didn't realize that.
It actually is cheaper for large businesses like Pepsi, Coca-Cola, what's it called, General Mills, all these household name corporations, Procter & Gamble, to buy businesses than start a new one. So if they see a new snack bar, and you're like, why did RX Bar get hundreds of millions of dollars so quickly? It would cost them $75 million to $150 million to start that business. And it'll take them 2 years. And it's a distraction from their business. And so for a large corporation, it's cheaper to buy them for a couple $100 million than to spend 75 to 150 to gamble on a new one. And so you're seeing that happen in food and beverage a lot because they want the shelf space, but they also want to save themselves 2 years. And for them, $200 million is nothing.
Nothing.
And one more caveat. When they acquire a company, because they are publicly traded, and they go spend $300 million to go buy a brand, guess what? Their stock goes up by $300 million to $1 billion that day. So it's free. And people don't talk about that enough.
No. This is why we're on Mondays. Right here. This is why we're here. Listen, people, are you getting this?
Do you remember that Spotify deal? And people were like, I cannot believe Joe Rogan got $100 bazillion.
Yeah.
Yeah, their stock went up like $1 or $2 billion that day.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. Just up.
Joe Rogan got 100 or 200 million bucks.
It's insane.
We got 4 billion too.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
right. In
Yeah.
one day. So when you really think about it, if you can build a company like John just mentioned, and you start to actually poke those bears, the 800-pound gorillas, and start to get noticed, they're either going to crush you or they're going to buy you. And a lot of times they're going to want to buy you because they want to what's called acqui-hire you. Imagine you buy John Malott's company and you get John Malott's brain, and he works with you for 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years. Probably can't afford him for 5 years, but let's say you get him for 2 or 3 years. So let's say a big brand, big supplement company goes and buys him for $96 million, but they get him for 2 or 3 years. The value of a $4 billion brand getting an executive like John Malott to be there for 2 years is going to probably make more than $96 million.
Yeah.
So it's free. And if they're publicly traded, they're going to do even better.
It's
And
huge.
so I say that because there are companies, when I try to give you the gloom and doom of like, there's so many different companies in every category, there is, make yours stand out and make it so that's different enough that one of these big companies wants to buy you. All right, the last segment, we talk about charity.
Yes.
So we talk about making money, we talk about investing money, we talk a bit about giving money away to charity. How do you decide what you're going to cut a check for? Or how do you decide what you're going to rally the troops? You're going to get your community, your city, your family and friends to get behind a certain type of charity.
Yeah, for me, it's pretty easy because of my background. In there's a lot of young people that are just off track, and it's hard for young people to find direction today. There's everything's being thrown at them, and you're kind of all over the place. You got social media, a lot of times having you worship or follow or be enamored by maybe the wrong people. in the city where I grew up in, the crime rate per capita is just insane, and it's getting worse. It's not getting better. So for me, my money, my charitable donations go to causes that help at-risk youth. Because in the end, it was a drug rehabilitation program, and one guy who saw more in me than I saw in myself that got me on track. And he was the first guy. He gave me a book. How to Win Friends and Influence People was my first introduction to personal development at 17. And I was like, I had dropped out of school already. I had already done 18 months in a juvenile detention facility. I was already kind of hardened in thinking, I lost my sister to heroin at 21 years old. My brother, who's 2 years younger than me, has been in and out of prison his entire life, heroin addict. There just weren't a lot of people around us directing us in a positive direction. Yep. So I've put a lot of money in different places. I've invested in. So the cool part of that, I've invested in drug rehabilitation programs, things like that were actually got a return while I was helping. So I was doing good and while doing good. Yeah. So that kind of stuff I can really. And I didn't care if I lost my money. What they were doing, to me, made a lot of sense.
Explain that line: doing good while doing good.
Doing good while doing good. I mean, I find I like to invest in things that will impact society. I never got that concept until about a decade ago. Yep. It just made sense because I'm more concerned. I have 4 daughters now, so I'm really concerned about what does this world look like in 10 years,
for sure,
20 years from now. I have a wild ass 13-year-old that, I want the world to be good. And so I'm trying to find areas that are going to have impact, particularly for her, long-term stuff. And if we don't have our youth right, I mean, that's all. Like, I don't want to be some old dude, worried about walking down the street everywhere I go. And when people are desperate, they do desperate things. And
you saw the founder of Cash App got stabbed last week.
Man, I just saw that. In San Francisco, right?
For no reason. It's terrible.
Senseless. That stuff. It just hurts, man. And if we don't solve that challenge, we got much bigger challenges ahead of us.
All right, guys, you're listening to the Money Mondays episode here with John Malott and co-hosted by The Real Tarzan. We always have you guys have one favor at the end of these episodes. Visit us at themoneymondays.com. We do our weekly coaching there every 4 p.m. every Monday Pacific Standard Time. But we want you guys to share these topics. You're hearing things that are very important about our society, about money, about investing, about stocks, real estate, leases, apartments, everything in between. I want you guys to feel comfortable talking about money because we all grew up thinking it's rude to talk about money. True. And we think it's rude for you not to talk about money. So make sure you talk about the Money Mondays, talk about money with your staff, your friends, your family. And we'll see you guys next Monday.
Peace. Hey.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Money Mondays podcast. I'm here with my co-host, The Real Tarzan. We have a very, very, very special guest. I've known this guy for many, many years. I watched him build a $100 million company with 160,000 square feet of warehouse space right across from the Spearmint Rhino in Las Vegas. I'd never been to the Spearmint Rhino, but I have been to his reef building that he built right there. It was fun to watch it and watch what he did and build it in multiple cities. And so we're going to talk to him about business, cannabis, crypto, investing, and all things in between. So he's a perfect guest for the Money Mondays. Please welcome Mr. Matt Morgan.
Thanks for having me, guys.
And the crowd
Appreciate
goes wild.
it.
All right, Matt, the way it works is we talk about 3 core topics: how to make money, how to invest money, and how to give some away to charity. But first, we want to get your 2-minute bio so we can get straight to the money.
Amazing. So again, thanks for having me, guys. Driving all the way over here to Miami, Florida. So appreciate you guys making the trek across the country. Originally a farm boy out of Montana, so I grew up on my grandparents' farm. Got fired from every job I had growing up. Basically, I had a hard time taking direction from people that I felt like didn't know what they were talking about. Started reading a lot of books from the age of 12 to 18. Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. Rich Dad Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich. Just started to reprogram my brain. Thought my teachers were full of crap, and so ended up going to college for 10 days, dropping out, and started on my career as a professional entrepreneur. Had a successful career in real estate in my early 20s. Started getting within developers, builders, over leveraging myself, thinking that I was invincible. At 23, 2008 came around and I was over leveraged and lost everything. So that was my first lesson on economic cycles. Had to, recalibrate and figure out what was going on. So I ended up deciding that cannabis was the next big thing. Ended up fully diving into cannabis in 2008, so pretty early on, and failed miserably at first. Fast forward from 2010 to 2018, built over $1 billion in cannabis companies, and did a few more stints. Did a biotech company after that got acquired in 2020, and then since then I've just been using some of the capital that I got through my exits and deploying it into a very diversified portfolio of operating company, passive investments, and having a lot of fun. And now in 22, I dove back into cannabis for a international play.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
All right, so there's a lot to unpack there. Obviously, going from real estate to tech to cannabis and everything between. Let's walk through and start with the main on the cannabis side. When you were building the cannabis space, it wasn't as legal and easy with billboards and things that, like, back then it was the Wild Wild West. Now you're seeing it everywhere because it became recreational and people could actually get approved in a lot of states. What are your thoughts about people that are going into emerging markets, whether it's NFT, cannabis, or things that they don't exactly know what's going to happen with that market? How do they navigate it? Is it lawyers, accountants, research? What do they do?
I would say be prepared for controlled chaos. And there's going to be a lot of guesswork, and I don't know, it's just something that comes from the gut. You have to kind of look at what your vision looks like outward looking, 1 month, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 60 months, and kind of position yourself strategically, from an aspirational standpoint of where you're heading, and then try to position yourself so you can monetize all the way along. Sometimes you make bad bets, sometimes you make great bets and assessments, and hopefully there's more winners than losers.
When I was out there visiting you the very first time, I mean, you were building over 100,000 square feet in Las Vegas when, again, cannabis was in the Wild Wild West phase. How do you make the decision to, I'm going to build this humongous multi-story facility with hundreds of employees? Like, how do you go through that thought process?
So I'm a huge fan of calculated risk. I like to gamble, but normally the casinos have odds against you. So in business, if you understand what you're doing and the lay of the land and the assessment, you can make very calculated risks. So in Nevada, when you saw what I was building, I deployed $35-40 million on that project. First of all, I landed in Las Vegas before I had any licenses, and I'm like, bring me to the largest M1 zone building. It's closest to the Strip. So they brought me to that building across from Spearmint. It was an old food distribution site. I'm like, I'll buy it. And it was $8.5 million. And they're like, okay. I'm like, 2 weeks, no contingencies, I'll close cash.
Oh my God.
And they were like, oh my God, who is this kid, right? I was like 28 years old.
Right.
And so I bought the building because I knew that, first of all, I knew the building in Vegas would go up in value.
Right,
So
for
whether
sure.
I would turn it into a pot, shop or not,
I
knew that building was going to be worth a lot of money.
Close
So
to the wind.
I was like, all right, this is safe investment.
Yeah.
So then as I'm building my executive team and I start putting these apps together, I knew enough about the space by that time. I'm like, these are good apps. And then I started talking to politicians and county commissioners. I'm like, all right. And I'd already flown them to my other operations in Arizona, and I let them do a Q&A with me, like, what do you like about the program? What would you change? So they literally already knew who I was, and I was kind of like the golden boy from Arizona that was helping them craft their program. So I'm like, all right, the odds of me not getting at least one of these licenses is very, very slim. So I'm going to take a calculated risk and start building so that when I get the license, I'm so far ahead of everybody that I'll crush. If I wouldn't have got a license, I was prepared to buy a license anyway. So whatever it was going to take, I was going to be in business. But the calculated risk paid off, and I put in 8 applications and got the 8 highest scores in the state. So that was the beginning of what became like a big machine. As far as how I built it out, no one had built the cultivation really of that size indoor. So I've always had to there's not like a playbook of how to build a cannabis company because no one had ever done it before.
Right.
So I'm like taking pieces from all right, how do the big hotels do climate control, and how do they control 5,000 rooms if you're the MGM Grand? Oh, they use centralized chilling systems with air handlers and ducting systems that's 75% more efficient than normal like household condensing units. Because historically guys would just build a room and then put an AC on it, and then build a room and then put an AC on it. And I'm like, no, we're going to centralize everything and make this so efficient that we become a low-cost provider. So it's like you just take bits and pieces. Like when I'd build an executive team, I wouldn't say, who knows the most about marijuana? I would be like, all right, that guy works for Disney, and he's really good at finance, so he understands like a lot of moving parts and operational components within like the Disney ecosystem. So I can just show him how marijuana works, and he can apply those same principles. I actually didn't want people from the space. I wanted professionals that were the best in their class, and then I'll be like, all right, now let me inject cannabis into that equation.
So when you're in a market like cannabis and there's thousands and thousands and thousands of brands that are popping up, how do you stand out? How do you keep customers? How do you get them the first time, and how do you retain them?
So I was always one of the youngest CEOs, and so I felt like that gave me a huge advantage. I didn't have the experience of the older guys, but I was also very open-minded. So like when I started Bloom in 2011, I was aggregating data and using text messaging, blasting, and any technology I could, like emails. And then I was like aggregating and slicing and dicing that data. And then I'd be like, all right, this guy buys vapes. So like every 3 days hit him with a vape sale. You know what I mean? And I was so far ahead of the competition that we were like doing millions of dollars in revenue on a monthly basis within like months. And then social media started to really build a lot of momentum because Instagram started to pick up steam. So my next cannabis company, I'm like, you know what, these guys can do all the billboards they want and magazines. I'm gonna go all in on social media. And I was like, how do I create a household name brand from thin air? Oh, I leverage celebrities' followings that they've been building for years, right? So I started grabbing different guys. Like me and Bernard became very close with Reef. And he's like, hey, mind if I bring my friend Wiz Khalifa along? I'm like, yeah, let's go.
Sure.
So then we like curate and like drop, you know, Khalifa Kush for Wiz, and it became a smashing success. So then Bernard was known as the guy. He wasn't what he is today. I mean, he's blossomed into, you know, a powerhouse in the space, like probably the most well-known guy.
For sure.
But back then it wasn't like that. He was on the come up and he was crushing it, but wasn't at the level he is now. And so, but he was known as the guy who had the best weed. So every celebrity when they came in town, like, yo, Bern, can I get a bag, right? So now this was looked at as Berner's place in Vegas. So every celebrity goes to Vegas. So they're like, hey, Bern, I'm in Vegas. Can I get a sack? Because most of them smoke. So I'm like, yeah, I'll give you a, you know, a gift bag, quote unquote. That cost me $200-300. What does all that posting on social media where they have 20 million followers do? What's that worth?
Yeah,
that's worth hundreds of thousands, if not
sure.
millions of dollars.
I'll give them $100K. Yeah.
So every kid that's following their idols on social media sees them with these reef bags and all the products inside of it, Khalifa Kush, you know, Exotics by Burner, whatever it may be. So every kid in their head's like, oh my God, I have to go to Reef when I get to Las Vegas and Phoenix and wherever else we occupied, right? I just ingrained it in their heads that if the celebrities go there, they must have the best stuff. It must be the cool place to go. So every kid had to go there. Everyone had to go there. And next thing you know, there's, you know, a line at 24/7. Like we did $1 million in 24 hours.
That is nuts.
Yeah.
So let's say someone's thinking about starting a cannabis brand, a CBD brand, or a clothing line or anything else. How do they decide if they should be cheap, low price point, medium price point, affordable, or super high end?
You know, I think it depends on what market they're entering. Obviously, if you have the capital and you can make a premium quality product, I think premium brands are definitely the way to go. You know, you never see Louis Vuitton on discount.
No.
But also, you know, a lot of bulk sales happen in the middle of the market. I would say the majority, like in cannabis, most of the sales occur within the mid-shelf stuff.
Sales, you mean exits?
What's that?
You mean like exits, acquisitions?
No. Sales
So
for like
discounts.
The consumers are buying the product.
Got it. Okay.
It's like the mid-shelf stuff. They don't want the low quality stuff,
Right.
like 25 and 8, but they want something that's like 35, 40. They don't want to pay 65, 70.
Right.
But they want to go to the place where they see the best products in the magazines. So like, I still shop there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It still gives them that recognition as a consumer that they're a high-end consumer. So it just depends on what you want to. You got to identify and decide who you want to be. Do you want to be Louis Vuitton or do you want to be Walmart? I mean, if you look at the two market caps, there's you know, obviously that most people don't have the luxury of buying Louis Vuitton, but everyone has the luxury of shopping at Walmart if they want to, right? They aspirationally want to shop at Louis Vuitton, but that's just not the reality. And the wealth discrepancy from the low class to the middle class and the upper class is getting wider and wider, right? So you're going to be servicing to a much lower percentage of clientele with the upper echelon brands. So I think you just need to look at whatever market you're entering and the demographics of that market and see where it's being underserved and then, you know, go for it.
So let's say someone like Tarzan gets 200 million views a month, wants to start a pet CBD brand. And he comes to you and he says, here's my deck. It's going to be called Wild Jungle Pet CBD. I want to raise $2 million for my brand. How does he determine his valuation? What does he do? Like, what would he do to convince someone like Matt Morgan to invest in the company?
So, I mean, he's already got the hardest part pegged, which is its exposure, right? He's already built the following through his, you know, travels and exotic animal encounters and everything else. So it's not hard to sell Tarzan in a pet CBD brand. He's already an expert in the space, right? So I mean, any sophisticated investor can be like, yeah, like, are you going to run it? Who's going to run it?
Right.
Like, what's their experience? But marrying Tarzan with a differentiated product in a sector that he's an expert is a no-brainer. As far as valuation goes, I mean, you kind of got to look at the market, size of the market, how much you can penetrate that market, how much of that market share you think you're going to gain, and then take some sort of discount to that, because no one's ever perfectly right, and sometimes assumptions can be a little bit overinflated.
Of course.
Entrepreneurs can tend to get a little bit exaggerational on their but because they're optimists, right? They're all very optimistic, like, I can do this, I can do that.
If I just get 1% of the market,
yeah,
and the market's $6 billion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I had a mentor I still talk to every week, but he said, just plan on everything taking twice as long and costing twice as much as you think, right? Because a lot of entrepreneurs have unrealistic expectations. So it'll all boil down to numbers and size of market and everything. But it would be, for being a startup, I think it'd be very favorable terms to Tarzan being who he is, his following, and the product that he wants to distribute.
I'm glad you said that. We have a deck right here. No,
oh, perfect. Let's go.
All right. So we talked a bit about the making money side. Let's talk about the investing side. So as you start to exit companies or build up in your career, or someone that's listening, they're starting to make a couple $100,000 a year. They got some extra money. They want to throw in 25K, 50K, 100K into things. How do you determine what you're going to invest your money, time, or energy into?
So I think you need to classify your investments into low risk, medium risk, and high risk. And then depending on your risk appetite, my risk appetite is extremely high. Like my wealth advisor's like, here's like the S&P 500 investments. Here's like the NASDAQ, here's super high risk, and you're like somewhere over here.
Psychopath.
He's like, literally, I got to like talk you off a ledge all the time. So like, for me, calculated risk is, I like very high risk.
Right.
Most people can't stomach that. Like crypto, I would consider very high risk.
For sure.
Right. The government could pass a bill that says they can take your crypto or your digital asset whenever they want, right? And Bitcoin can go to $8,000. We just don't know.
Yep.
And so you just have to decide, like, all right, what kind of person am I? Because most people will get very emotional when they invest.
For sure.
And so you just need to be careful. And I would say use a lot of your free time instead of watching like Netflix or, probably still wash your dog if you have to. But I would take a lot of your time. Like when I was younger, we didn't have access to all this information. And now with like AI and everything, it can like give you like immediate answers to so many things, when we used to have to scrub Google for hours to find answers. So with the way access to information we have now, you can become an expert in anything you want if you're just willing to dedicate yourself and read. But any sector or vertical you want to start becoming an investor in, the more knowledge you have, the more data that you can, go through, the better chance you have of winning in that investment. I mean, there's been times when I just like jump in a vertical and start firing away without really having a lot of knowledge. It's exciting, but like it's called learning by trial by fire.
Right.
It can get very expensive. And so I think you just have to decide what kind of person you are. If you like to see slow growth, but you want to make sure, there's not a high risk of you losing your money. Or if you're more in the middle and you're like to have some option for some good upside, but also don't really want to lose all your money in 24 hours. And then the high risk stuff where it's like, it gets really crazy. But classify there, decide what kind of person you are, and then build kind of a pie chart. All right, I'm going to put 10% into high risk, 40% into medium risk, and 50% into low risk. And I break it down further, like investments, cash, and then real estate. So that'd be like one part of that part of the pie chart.
So when someone's at that turning point, they start to make some money, they found some investments, how do they determine how much do I invest? Like I've got a couple $100,000 coming in, but sometimes what I've noticed is someone's making $150,000 for the year, and they think now, they went from making $50,000 to $80,000, now they're making $150,000, and they just go all in on that one thing. What would you say to someone that's like, I know this is gonna work, this is the new crazy amazing project, I'm gonna put all $150,000 into this one thing?
I've seen it happen a lot, and I've seen a lot of people lose a lot of money, their whole savings basically. A lot of times when something sounds too good to be true, it is. So I would say make sure you know what you're doing, and you better figure out how to make it work. Whether you're the operator of that new investment or just it's a passive investment, I would be very careful. The other thing I see people do often is they start at $50,000 a year and then they go to 80, 120, 150. Their lifestyle follows the money. So it's like you're at the same place. You're still a slave to that job because you don't have disposable income that can create something else for you. You just have a new BMW and a little bit a bigger condo now, instead of living below your means and having that extra money to invest, or hopefully invest maybe even in yourself or a new business that you work on off hours of your normal job until you can cut the chain from the slave job.
It's actually what I want to talk to you about next is outside of investing into companies or the stock market, real estate, what about investing in yourself? What can people do to invest more into themselves or into their minds?
So, I mean, there's a lot of things you could do. And a lot of this is free, right? Investing in yourself can be very free. Read a lot of books. There's unlimited YouTube videos. There's so many platforms where you can gain unlimited knowledge today. Like, I remember when we were young, like I had to go to like the public library to get books and stuff. And now you can literally just hop on your computer and it's like a portal into like infinity of knowledge if you want to dive in. So the other things you can do are go to, sign up for different mastermind events. I know you put on some of those. I've been part of them and they're great. The networking is, second to none. And the information that you can get from some of the instructors or from the guest speakers is top notch as well. The other thing I do, for example, is like I do a lot of biohacking. So I invest a lot in my body and my mind. I have a cold plunge at my house. I get in when I wake up, 45 degrees. I inject a lot of different peptides for physical abilities as well as memory, recall, for brain processing power, things like that. So I'm trying to like figure out the whole limitless concoction. But I think increasing your overall self, whether that's physical, mind, or both, I think that gives you a huge advantage to the general population.
How much money would you say you spend on the inside of you? Like you're extending your life?
Probably $250,000 a year.
$20,000 a month.
Yeah.
Peptides, vitamins, supplements.
I mean, yeah, I take 60 things a day.
60 things a day.
I have a chef that vacuum seals my meals, like partially cooked but not. So I just drop them in boiling water, and then I have a meal in like 3 minutes, like fresh. I do stem cells 3 to 4 times a year. I'm starting to do exosomes now. A lot of ozone treatments. Yeah.
So you're
I
gonna
get
live
my
forever.
blood drawn every 3 months. I've never felt better. I just turned 38, and I feel better than when I was 20.
So Tarzan, on the learning side, how do you learn so much about the animals themselves, their scientific, biological names, and all the fancy stories, and how long they live, and what do they eat, and their diet? Like, how do you learn all these things?
Well, I'm curious for one. Like for instance, with snakes, there's 3,500 different species of snakes. And I have like 1, 2, 3. It's like, where do they come from? How big do they get? And what do they eat? Depending on where they come from, if they're venomous or not. Some place like Australia just came back from there. They have the most venomous snakes per square inch out of any place on the earth. Top 10 most venomous snakes over there. If I go to Brazil, it's like, it's anacondas over there. I'm excited to learn about anacondas. If I go to Indonesia, it's like the largest snake on the planet, the longest one, the reticulated python, and the largest venomous snake on the planet, the king cobra, live in the same territory. So it's like, depending on where I go, if I want to learn about birds, I'm going to South America, learn about toucans and macaws. It's just I'm just curious, and learning these things to retain it. I figure out what they eat, where they come from, how they live. What time of year do they mate? When they mate? Just all these different questions I have, and with just different variations of research, and then into one species allows me to be curious in other species of animals and their subspecies. So like I love dolphins. There's like dolphin here. There's a pink dolphin in the Amazon River. And then there's like killer whales, and then there's there's just all types of sharks, and there's just so many different things I'm interested in. Down to ants. I love ants. What people don't know, but I'm just curious, man.
Right. Would you say that your ability to continuously educate yourself about animals comes from passion of loving animals and just being completely infatuated with the Animal Planet?
And like, outside of Animal Planet and the internet and public library and magazines, I love to learn. So going to different countries and learning from locals, or people that I've met scientists that have zero clue about snakes, but they know everything about primates. And they know everything about leeches, or botany.
Probably have to.
Yeah, so I'm learning so many different things in that area while they're asking me about crocodiles and snakes, like, oh, what about this or what about that, So it's like bouncing off, and I get to basically close a book that I know things in and then relearn it again from a different perspective, from a different teacher. And it just, again, I'm just so curious because I learn new things all the time about the same animals I've obsessed over my whole life.
It's dope. You're like one of the few people that actually gets to live out their dream and do exactly what you want to do, which
Yeah.
is rare.
One of my few questions just recently, probably you can help me answer too.
Okay.
Is I know humans have an endocannabinoid system, right?
Correct.
Am I saying that right?
Correct.
Do animals have that?
Mammals do.
Mammals do.
Yes.
No reptiles have it, right?
Not
No
that I'm
birds.
aware of. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's only mammals as far as I know, but all mammals do.
Yeah, a long time ago, one of my dogs got caught on a fence. He liked to jump,
Okay.
and I gave him some CBD
Yeah.
to help his wound and wound treatment, and it healed so much faster than another dog I treated
Yeah.
with no CBD.
Really?
Yeah. it was
So you did like a little test?
A little test.
Was
yeah.
it control?
Yeah, it was cool. I really liked it. I enjoyed it.
I've noticed that cannabis helps dogs specifically a lot, whether
Yeah.
they're hyper or anxiety or whatever it may be, but it really chills them out and like brings them to like a equilibrium.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
Do you think that cannabis will ever be federally regulated?
1000%. I would bet everything I have on that. But they thought Biden was going to do that the first week he was in office. They thought Biden was going to do a lot of things probably.
He just
But he
forgot.
likes ice cream. So,
He likes ice cream.
he loves ice.
Ice cream
Likes
is
gum in the ice
delicious.
cream. So there's the cannabis companies boomed in what would that be, January of 2021 actually, and on the premise that Biden was going to open it wide up and it'd be like a normal business. Well, that didn't happen. So now you have this big log jam. There's no liquidity. The cannabis stocks are down like between 80 and 95% depending on the company. And so now you're just seeing like companies drop left and right, massive consolidation. So this will be like the big consolidation event.
Yep.
The strong will be standing, and then the Fed will legalize sometime in the future. I bet you actually a Republican legalizes it, which is super crazy, but I think that's what's going to happen. And so you'll see the giants kind of emerge from all of that, which become like I hate to say it, but the Anheuser-Busch's of the world.
Yeah, that's the first company I thought of.
Yeah. So it's going to be very interesting to watch it play out. But if you have a big war chest of capital, now is the time you start rolling up extremely distressed assets, waiting for that massive pump when they announce legalization, because that's when there's probably estimates of like 800 billion in institutional capital sitting on the sidelines
Oh
right
my
now,
God.
and that's just in America. And so that's just sitting there waiting. There's only so many assets for it to go into. So when that pours in, I mean, you're going to see like you'd be sitting on like a geyser. And then if you can exit in that 1 year period when they announce legalization versus implementation, you get some crazy multiples that are really hard to wrap your head around.
Right.
And the only reason I know this is because I saw what happened in Canada. Canada announced legalization in October of 17, and then it legalized in 18. And that from 17 to 18, the craziest. I saw companies sell for 100 times revenue. Yeah, wild. And Canada only has 1/20th the amount of institutional capital that America does. So imagine it'll be like that on steroids, basically.
Do you think that the people that were locked up for non-violent cannabis-related charges will ever get released?
I'd like to think so, man. It makes me sick to my stomach to think people are rotting away in a jail cell because of a plant. I got in an OA because I saw what was happening, and I had a firsthand account of like what the plant could do for people's lives. Like some of my buddies that were in Iraq had severe PTSD, and like what saved their lives was cannabis, and they used cannabis on a daily basis. The VA had them on all these pharmaceuticals, and it was really, they had no quality of life, so they got off everything utilizing the plant. And obviously I've served millions of people cannabis now, and I've seen what it can do for a person suffering from stage 4 cancer. And whether it's from the cannabis or not, I've seen a lot of people that were supposed to die in 6 weeks or 8 weeks or 10 weeks, and that were alive 2 years later for whatever reason. So there's people at Harvard Medical Institute that say cannabis is the most medicinal plant on the planet. My friend Eddie Mary in Israel, they're the farthest along in cannabis research. They've been researching for decades. He's curing cancer with specific strains of cannabis right now, and now he's trying to figure out why. It's called the mechanism of action, but he is curing cancer with, like, he'll put like blueberry cannabis into a petri dish with breast cancer, and it will completely eradicate it. But then he'll put pancreas cancer in there and won't do anything to it.
Wow.
And then he'll put green crack, another strain, in a petri dish, and it will kill the pancreatic cancer but won't touch the breast cancer. So he just can't figure out why it's happening, but it's definitely, I think nature has the key to every one of our issues.
Agree.
And I think that pharmaceutical companies are running rampant, and I think we have a pharmaceutical pandemic in the United States. No other country operates like this. They have complete control of the politicians and everyone else. I mean, it's wild. Like, I trust traditional medicine zero at this point. I trust the FDA zero, and that's why I do all this preventative stuff, stem cells, peptides, and I haven't been sick in a long time, many years, thank God.
All right, for the last segment, we like to talk about charity. We like to about whether it's giving away money, or what we also like to mention is you don't need to have money to do charity. There's a lot of things you can do with your time, energy, social media, and rallying the community together. Similar like the charities that we do, you don't need money to do a toy drive. You got to get everyone else to bring toys over to
feed the
location.
homeless, right?
When it comes to feeding the homeless, you just rally the community together, and they'll help you feed the homeless. And so for people listening, even though we're called the Money Mondays, it does not take money to do charity. You can rally your community around you to come to a building and bring food for the homeless. Come to this building and bring clothes for women that are in women abuse shelters. Come to this building and bring toys. Come to this building and bring turkeys and cranberry sauce for Thanksgiving. It's just rallying the community together. If you can happen to donate, fantastic. But here we like to have this segment where we ask people, how do you decide like what charities you get behind, whether it's financially or putting a personal brand? Because you got a lot of followers. When you say something, people listen. How do you decide what to put your personal brand or your personal checkbook behind?
Normally, if it's like a story that hits close to home. But honestly, my biggest passion for charitable causes is actually animals. Like when I see animals get abused or like abandoned, like it, you know, yeah, I literally want to like, I think like that should be punishable by death.
For sure.
Because we're in a position of power and animals are like innocent. And so like, just like I've seen crazy stories that just wreck me. So for me, like, you know, whenever we're getting rid of old clothes or old towels or anything, we'll like bring them to Humane Society. Anything we don't use that they can use at the animal shelters, we'll donate to them. But actually, Tarzan will like this. My life goal is to accumulate 10 figures of wealth, and then I want to buy 1 million acres in Texas, and then put part of it into money market so there's a return, so there's a constant flow to run the whole thing, and then use some of it for infrastructure, and then rescue animals, whether they're domestic or wild. Like, you know, if there was a case like a Joe Exotic issue, bring all the tigers over.
Well, if you need someone to operate it, he's ready.
Birds are actually very I have 2 parrots. So I have a Goffin cockatoo and a black-winged jardine, and they're like little kids, right? So I see how intelligent they are, and then I see parrots in these little cages, and I'm like, it's not right. And birds aren't protected in any of our bills, our laws, because they don't fall under mammals, basically. So I'm actually going to start putting money behind getting bills passed for birds.
I love this guy.
So that's my goal, is to actually save as many animals as possible that were mistreated by humans, and then I want to get homeless people that can pass drug tests, and also orphans, and let them work at the facility and help take care of the animals to try and rehabilitate them back into society as well. Yeah. So that's my goal. I'm going to try to pull off in the next, I'd say, 8 to 12 years.
I'm there with you, buddy.
Hey, appreciate you.
I believe that you're going to do it.
But it keeps me, you know, motivated, right? Because at this point, money doesn't really motivate me that much. So I have to have something like out there that I'm striving for and reaching. And animals are definitely, it's unconditional love. It's different, you know. Humans can be dangerous and have ulterior motives, where animals just want to live. So I respect and appreciate Tarzan for dedicating his life to animals.
When I ask Tarzan, I say, what is the most dangerous animal on the planet? Is it hippopotamus? That's what I always hear.
Right.
And he answers the same thing every way. How do you answer?
Humans.
By far. I mean, we're the most destructive thing to ever grace the earth. So, and I don't know. I think that I would argue maybe we're the dumbest animal to ever be on earth. We'll be the first thing to eradicate ourselves.
For sure.
Yeah. So it's crazy, but Dan, you have some great points about, you know, you don't have to have wealth or anything to give to charities. But I would also say, be very careful of the charity that you're donating to, and maybe try to get closer to the cause you're trying to donate to, because a lot of these charities have executives that make $600,000 a year, right? So I just hate to see people trying to do a good thing and then get taken advantage of. But I would say just figure out what you're passionate about, whether it's helping people or a very specific type of person that's in need, of, you know, battered mothers and children, or whatever it may be, and then try to figure out how to insert yourself into helping alleviate some of the pain that's inside of that area.
Last question, as we go into 2023, 2024, there's a lot of chaos in the media. People are nervous about a recession, and the whole world's burning down, etc. How do you tell people to stay calm amidst the chaos?
It's hard because the average person is scared. There's too many unknowns, right? We're up there like calculating all these risks and being like, this could happen, this can happen, I'm going to put this over here and do this. But I get it. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of uncertainty, stabilization. The USD, you know, looks like someone's going to challenge the US dollar as the world currency. Looks like the US might be preparing for financing a war against that. So, like for me personally, I focus on cash flowing businesses where there's an exchange of value for something. Try to make sure it's something that people need. It's a need, not a want, right? Like if the world goes to shit, luxury watches might not be that important, right? But selling rice or selling survival kits might be very important. Right. So I like that because you never know. Like, is the dollar going to collapse? Is cryptocurrency going to collapse? Are they going to manipulate the precious metals markets? Is the stock market going to collapse? Like, you just don't know what's going to happen. No one has a crystal ball. So I like to build businesses where there's got to be an exchange for something for value. Yep. So whatever the value is, they're going to be exchanging that for whatever you're offering, assuming that it's something that they need.
Yep. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you have listened to The Real Tarzan, Matt Morgan. Make sure to follow them on social media. We have one important request at the end of each episode is to visit themoneymondays.com. Make sure to share these episodes with your friends that care about money and have discussions about money. We all grew up thinking it's rude to talk about money. We think it's rude to not talk about money because that's why we're in a lot of the financial crises that we're on.
Schools need to teach about money management, finances. They don't teach about any of it on purpose so that you become a slave to your job and you're a hamster on the wheel.
We are here to fix it so you are not a hamster on the wheel. Have these discussions, share with your friends, talk about money, talk about real estate, investing, stocks, apartments, loans. There's so many things to research about, but you have to have those discussions because it will help you, your family, your friends, and everyone around you. I'm Dan Fleischman. We're here with The Real Tarzan and Matt Morgan, and we'll see you guys next Monday.
Thanks, guys.